Hello, and welcome to today's video about LXD containers. Basically, Ubuntu just released these new, they call them lighter visors. It's basically a new hypervisor, I would say. If you're familiar with LXC, I did another video about that. You should check that out. I'm going to basically show you the early stages of this new container service. I'm not actually going to use multiple machines running LXD. I'm actually just going to use one, and I'm just going to show you a brief introduction to it. It's very alpha yet. I wouldn't consider any of this stable. I wouldn't put any of this in production. After that, I'm actually going to show you how I set up my development environment to start programming on Linux in Python. So there's a little bit of a tutorial for that coming up too. So the first thing you do here is install this LXD. I didn't have to do this new group thing. I had to add the Linux containers, and then you can do this to list all of them. I recommend not using i386. I recommend using AMD 64-bit. You'll see here in a minute when I launch these. I also recommend using the trusty image, which is Ubuntu's LTS, which is long-term support. Even though this is 1504, I'm going to tell it to run 1404's images here. Trusty is the I consider more stable, or LTS version that I consider more stable. So I always run LTS on production. So the first thing you want to do here to make sure your LXC or LXD container is working correctly is you want to make sure the service is started. Many times when this installed, it was not started. So if you do this, it should say active and running. Tells you some more information on what's going on here. This is just my name of my machine. So now you can do LXC list, and I actually have a machine already started here, but I will show you how to create another one. So the first command I'll teach you is the LXC launch command. We don't really need this anymore, so let's just do LXC launch and images Ubuntu /trusty /AMD64, and I'm basically going to name it test01. So now it's going to create this container and actually start it all in one command here. So now if you do LXC list, you'll see test01, here's my new IP. So that's a brand new machine. So now if I want to get into this machine, I want to do LXCX, execute the name of the container, and you want to execute bash. So now you hit enter, and you'll see this prompt has changed. So now you're inside this new container, and you can run all the commands you want isolated to this machine only. I'm going to actually go back here and show you where this image is actually located. So right here is the root FS of the other machine. So if I put a file here like hello world.txt, when I do this command, you'll see it right at the root of the tree. So that's where it's stored on the file system. So it's var lib LXD LXC test01 rootfs, and then this is where it starts. And then when you go into the root user, you get the root directory here. So that's where it sits on the file system. Okay, so now that I'm done, say I didn't need to do anything really with this machine, I want to clean it up. So I'm going to go back to root here to just get out of that directory. I'm going to do LXC stop test01. So we're going to stop that machine. And all these commands are documented here. And then I'm going to do LXC destroy, or sorry, delete. I think it used to be called destroy, but now they use delete. Okay, so now if I do LXC list, you'll see it's all cleaned up. So now the next step is to run this in parallel and start creating some testing environments automatically for me. I do this quite often with LXC containers, so this isn't much different with LXD containers. So here's a command that I'm going to use. I do for I from 10 to 15. It's actually going to do 10 to 14. And we're going to do this giant command. And there's some special stuff in here. As you can see, it's wrapped in parentheses, so I can pass it this ampersand to say run in the background and launch these all at once. So as soon as you hit this enter, 5 of these are going to spawn and start creating 5 instances immediately. The other thing you'll notice here is I inject the version, or not the version, but the image number into the name of the image. So it's going to do test 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And you can see $I is going to match this I through this loop. The other thing I do here is pass an extra command to say, hey, this thread finished, because you'll see immediately that this command actually returns to the command line, and you wouldn't really know when this stuff is finished without doing like LXC list. You could find out, but this is a little bit better with this echo. It'll say when the thread actually finished. So I'll actually show you top here. Do nice top. You can see the machine's nice and idle here. And you'll start to see these thousands user. So that's actually this one running right here. When you see the user 1000 here, that's this LXC container. They have their own users, they have their own PIDs. Everything is separated throughout the system. Alright, so as soon as I hit enter, now this will really thrash your machine. So if you're running other production stuff, I recommend do not doing this. You'll see very quickly how quickly this goes to 100. This will go basically down to probably 30% or so. So just hit enter, and you can see these all are spawning now. And then it'll actually spit out when the container finishes over here. I have a feeling a lot of this is actually disk I/O here, but I don't have a very good SSD in this machine. So you can actually see, which is funny, is thread 15 finished first, which is probably the last thread to start, which is interesting. But they all finished pretty quickly here. Okay, I think that's all of them. And you can see they're still coming up over here. You kind of want to wait till this number is idle again. So, I mean, they could be doing DHCP right now. They're bringing up an entire... there's a pretty big curve here for bringing up these machines. And you want to make sure you... wait till they're all up. See, they're still coming up. 99. That's looking better. You want to see 98 or so here. That means your machine's pretty much entirely idle. So now if I do list here, they all have IP addresses. Okay, so that's essentially what LXD and LXC containers are. I'm not really going to go into the LXD commands because I don't really have another machine set up to do special things. The most important thing I think they're going to make is the LXD migrate command work, where you're going to be able to migrate these running instances to another machine, which will be awesome. There's some cloning stuff too. You can clone these very easily. As you can see though, they're just they just exist on the command line too, though. I've copied LXC containers with no issues here before. And there's an LXC clone command, so essentially I bet you that's what it's doing. I'd like to see the differences, the new Docker stuff, if you've ever used Docker, is based on an image, and then it only has the diff of the image above it. I don't think they're we're going to get to that for this system. Maybe they will eventually do that. That'd be nice. Maybe they already have, and I just don't know it. But it looks like each one of these are self-contained. So like if D Scheffner is 444 megs. Yeah, I mean, this looks like a full system. Anyway, so now I'm going to show you how I set up my environment on a new machine all the time. So whenever I get a new machine or a new environment, I need to pre-configure all my tools. And I've actually been working on a program to do that. And that program here is github.com/thechef17 is my username. And the project, I called it Yore, Y-O-R-E. It's basically an attempt to bring a Ubuntu LTS machine 100% ready to be programming in Python only. I used to do Ruby too, but 99% of my job is Python now. So, and I really like Python, and I think I'm going to stick with it. So, it does a bunch of apt-gets. If you've ever used Python, the pip package manager, it installs 2 DBs, Postgres, and MySQL. It does not install MongoDB because of some error in the containers, and I might actually show you that if I have time. Some of the requirements, you want to be on the LTS version. I usually just test this on LTS. You need Python 2.7 still, which is kind of disconcerting because the new images only contain Python 3, which is kind of annoying, but we'll get around that in a minute. Git is basically the package manager for managing software repositories now. You also want a non-privileged user on the local machine, and many times this is called Ubuntu, and you'll see if you don't have one, here's the command to add it. So these are the 2 installation commands. One, if you don't have a local package repository, and one if you do. And the one if you do is significantly faster. Both these still require access to the internet, but this one will get your packages from a local mare and speed up things considerably. So I'll show you how to do that on these LXD containers. So you want to do LXC. Let's go into this first one. As soon as this changes the prompt, this means you're in this container. So you type clear, and now I'm going to paste that giant command here. You can see it wraps poorly here. Just press enter. It'll still work. So the first 2 things here it's going to do is install Python 2 right there. As it scrolls away, here's Python 2. It also installs wget, which is to get files off servers and stuff. I create this menu because you should read the source code that's coming with this and make sure you're not going to break your machine. If you run this in a virtual machine, go ahead, run it. But just forewarning that this is all experimental code all the time, basically. It's hard to maintain this and hard to test this a lot, but I try to keep up on it. So this is the part where I'm entering a DNS name or IP address for the local mirror, and my local mirror is .10 here at my house, and just press enter. Repeats this menu one more time, just type yes, and now this is the last thing you should have to do before it configures the whole machine. It's going to look for a non-privileged user, and usually on virtual machines they're called Ubuntu, and here it goes. Now as this is running, I'll show you a little bit of what it's actually doing, because watching packages fly by is pretty boring. And if you could see here, did I already scroll by too fast? You can see here it fetched 67 megs in 1 second, and that's just the first step. There's a bunch more coming, so that's what the advantages of having the local mirror does. Okay, so here is the Your program that's basically running. Just some basic outlines of this. Here's the packages that I install through apt-get. These are some of the pip packages I install. I'll show you how to use that in a minute. These are the packages I install that I don't want you to prompt for in the GUI or in the prompt. If you ever installed MySQL Server, it constantly sets or prompts you to set a password. So make sure you set these after you're done. I'm going to leave that up to you to do that. These are the Vim plugins I use from Git, and you can see them better here on the README. If you need to read what they do, this is where they're coming from. I just noticed one of them was very slow again for the first time when I used it, but it seems to be getting better every time. So that's pretty much it for this Your program. It does some Vim plugins, it does some packages, it also gets some default examples of stuff. And I'll show you how to use some of this stuff. apt.py is just a Flask example. Requirements.txt is actually right here, this sample. This shows you all the pip packages I will install and show you how to use those in a minute. So as you can see here, it finished 110 seconds, which is pretty good. The first thing you want to do is set a password for the Ubuntu user. Okay. Now you want to get out of this machine and go, you want to list this again, and now you want to SSH into these machines. I wouldn't recommend doing the LXC exec command anymore because it screws up the prompt when you're in Vim. Just take my word for it. So you want to do SSH Ubuntu at the IP. You just set the password. Now you're into this machine. Okay. So now that this machine has fully ran through that script, you'll have basically a complete Python environment ready to do certain things. So if you've ever worked on Python, the first thing you do with any Python environment is you want to do these make virtual env environments. And basically this is a way to isolate pip packages per environment. So I'm just going to create one called test. And then you'll see here that I'm on the test virtual env. You always want to make sure you're on the one you want. Virtual envs will basically make the packages isolated to that environment. So if I go here, you'll see this giant requirements file, and I'm going to actually install all these requirements. You just want to do pip install -r requirements. You want to make sure this says test, and you want to make sure you do not use sudo here. Those are two things you got to make sure you do here. And now this will compile all these modules, or all these Python imports. There's quite a few, but they actually don't take too long. Feel free to add and delete ones out of here to make yours faster or whatever you need. You can see here on the actually don't install NumPy because it takes a while to install. So if you need NumPy, make sure to comment this out and install it. So basically this program does only a couple things. It does the apt-get, the Python setup environment, the Vim plugins. It also sets up something called tmux, and I'll show you tmux in a minute. Tmux is basically just a window manager. Let's see if I have this other terminal still. Last time I did this, the video finished before, or this prompt finished before I set this up. Okay, so So this is start tmux. I'm going to show you this real quick. Tmux is basically just a window manager, and if I run this program, you'll see that it did a split here. So I have one window here, one window here, one window here. So here I can do stuff like work on is the command to work on the test environment for Python. So let's check the window. Okay, it finished with these. So now that I know that this is working, so now I can do Python import Bodo, import all the other packages, Django, import Flask. These all work now. And you got to make sure you're on the test. You want to do work on test when you load up a new prompt. So here I'll show you, to get to this window down here, you hit Control B and the arrow key of where you want to do. So I went Control B right, and then I hit Control B down, and now I'm here. So now if I do Python here, this is the same exact machine. Ubuntu at test. Ubuntu at test. If I do import Django, it's going to die. If I do import Bodo, it's going to die. And the reason why is because I am not on the virtual env environment here. So I have to exit there and do work on test. Python, import Django, import Flask. So that's a thing that really trips people up when the first time they start using this virtual env environment. Okay, the last thing I want to just show you is some of the, well, I'll show you one last thing in tmux, is you can hit Control B and hold it down, and then hit left and right, and it'll resize everything. And you can also do up and down. And you can see up and down act a little differently depending on which machine or which window you're in. So if I would need to fix this window, see how I needed to pull that down. So you just had to switch to it and then do that. So up and down act a little different than left and right, but it's pretty self-explanatory on how this works. To get out of these the same way as any terminal. If you hit Control C to get out of top, Control D is usually quit on a terminal. I'm going to go all the way back to where we started the tmux stuff here. So the last thing I just want to show you is the basics of what Vim did and the plugins. As you can see here, the Vim text editor starts with all the line numbers. It starts with a tree over here that shows you all the files you have here. These will change automatically when you have changes. So like there's some permission thing I need to fix here with this script. So I'll probably patch this after this video. Okay. So say I come down here and I'm going to do import OS. And as soon as I do that, this is going to take a minute because this is the first time it's doing it. It says regenerate auto import cache here. So this is caching all the imports and all the things on your local system, and it's actually taking up quite a few CPU cycles right now. If you see, Vim is probably hitting this pretty hard. But once it finishes, it will be a lot faster. So that first time, it just took a minute to fix. So now it says, now you'll get errors like here where it says OS is not actually used. So like os.system. The autocomplete can definitely be faster here. That's one of the things. It's one of the complaints I have about one of the Vim plugins, and all that can be controlled by Yeah, get out of here. All this can be controlled by this vimrc file. And this was in Git too. So this came over with that your install. So I tried to comment it as much as I can about about the script. So you'll see tons of stuff that is commented out and stuff I actually use. So this thing's called the nerd tree, and you can see I put it on the right and I tell it to go back to the main window. So just like in tmux, you can control where this one is. So this one you do Control W L, Control W H. We'll switch between this and so now say I need to see this requirements file, I just hit S and it'll split it down here, and then just like any other time I can just quit out of it. So that's split windows in Vim too. I was looking to turn off the autocomplete and I don't see that off the top of my head. But anyway, it works pretty well. Even with third party, the hardest part is getting these third party modules. Like Bodo is a pretty big, and maybe that's why they don't work very well. You can see it's generating auto import cache for Bodo. Think faster. It's just taking its time. See, it either gave up. Import Bodo dot. It gave up. Wah wah wah. So yeah, as you can see, it's not perfect, but hey, it works. I'm more concerned with PEP 8 stuff. So like if you do stuff beyond this line here, you get errors. Tells you if you import modules and don't use them. It'll tell you if you're not using a variables and stuff like that. I'm not really too concerned with the autocomplete. So I'm going to clean up this file. And then it'll say found errors and 0 warnings. So I'm going to quit out of here. And that's pretty much how you use LXD, the your program, how to program in Python. So like this is all Python. How to use the virtual env stuff. How to use Vim with all the plugins. And the last thing I want to show you is just how to clean up the virtual machine. So just like I showed you at the beginning here, I only use 10 here, but now say I'm all done for the day and I need to clean up 10 through 15 here. Basically want to just do LXC stop and LXC delete. And I usually watch top to see when this finishes. You can see I installed MongoDB on this machine, but I didn't. I can't install it inside the containers. There's a failed install of the package. If anyone wants to submit a patch, feel free to do it. It's on GitHub, and I'll accept anyone's patch. Okay, so now I can just do LXC list, and they're all cleaned up. So that's how you use LXD containers. Please subscribe, and thanks for watching.